Hello, we have December the 26th. You see it? Now we have after 12 o'clock in the middle of the day. What has been going on? There had been the attack, and thinking about it, that had been before, or this is in another town, another city, or looking to help if you are nearer than me. For me it is to think about that we ourselves felt unwanted. And this is not to complain, it is no use to do so. But it really is that looking at the whole situation, it is looking from my perspective, as I do it, for Gastland, a host country, you see. And then focus in and understand it is too near. There you see, a host country. This is a country that is hosting people because of economics, most likely not because wanting culture. This is said afterwards. And a host country is something where you want to participate if possible. For me, myself, it is strange. I'm in between. If that is true, that those could be uncles I then understand that it was difficult for them because of the whole situation. Having arguments inside of the system. My mother, as a woman, she had a better standing, so to speak, not to be officially in the leadership. And later I learned we wait till the times are becoming better, but that is no use to say to people I met, because those had been leaders. And then, what is that? Police? That is what is going on. If you are somehow affected, this is of interest to you. But now understanding this country had been built, as it is stated in this Spiegel, out of ruins. And then I can imagine the guests saying this is long gone. Why don't you do anything? And this is because it is not my custom to complain by doing something like explosions in a Weihnachtsmarkt. And then, since feeling unwanted, you try and then find your way. But what is with the guests who are here? After all, this was what I wanted first for today, to have new commentary on the old findings. I'm working as a detective, a kind of detective. This is all regulated in the country. If I would be a counselor again, this we had done, there would be, first of all, the thinking that had been before. Why was the whole situation not handled better than the last time before and before that? It is still not understood that it is now to look for those who want to take responsibility. Maybe this is of the old culture and that, but what is with the others? Maybe this is near the old culture from Europe. Maybe that as well. And then the whole thing is bound together by policing. Of course, you do so from the security standpoint and maybe from the insurance standpoint as well. Having been not a counselor, this had been the old counseling. It was not known too much, but the counselors of the Kaiser had been inside of this little sign somehow represented. It is important to understand it is about a thing to look at, and then understand you cannot look at it from the security point only. Guests are with their thoughts and their hearts, maybe even those are not fully there, but then again, with the thoughts and the hearts abroad. Maybe even of course more than me. I had been a guest to the Gaza Strip, being then around 7 years old. Around, is it? Approximately. And I had been with the so-called other side, and he asked, what are you doing there? And it is strange that now, most likely it will go on, only be looked at from the security perspective. There you could, of course, then have arguments to prolong the after 9/11 extra surveillance. There is, of course, talk about insurance and who is to blame. But thinking about security from the cultural perspective, there would then be the necessity, first of all, to ask for representatives who want to take responsibility And it is not that I complain not being felt. It is not a feeling problem. It is that you have not what you need. And this is not my invention. It had been in the old days with my father. This is a photograph. You have a disadvantage if people look at economics first, not understanding there is culture, and then some have not the wall, not to express your feelings by force. But having been asked, I said, we have no military anymore, and then the casualties are not to be calculated. If you start it, you have to look to the end. If you look for fellow soldiers, there is, of course, the problem, it is illegal. Then, thinking about legal possibilities, even that could be regarded illegal. And this is a problem. If you want to do something, you can't do so. It is because surveillance goes to those who could be a problem. And if the surveillance would be right, that would be bearable, I think, but it isn't. People are surveilled, and then there's a pattern, and in the old days it was forbidden to do Rasterfahndung. That is the notion, that is the word in Germany. Rasterfahndung. To have a pattern and then sift out. And it is with a looking back, with the background of police stating, and that being forbidden also. I'm looking at it, and I'm suspicious what will come out of it. Politicians doing it and then finding new arguments. Those who are in the box, that is the city or the township or the country, the countryside, those have hearts, real cultural feelings and so on, some abroad, and then feeling, not only feeling, but it is really the case, being forgotten. It is somehow then, my suspicion goes, calculated like a merchant does it. And if you're forgetting that, I now come to the point, my mother was waiting. She relied on people having given the promise that there is a time she will be having the honor to be needed and what comes with it again. And that then was politically, maybe by building laws, regulations, and then building on the willingness to follow it, the belief in the state. What is a state? The state of mind? No, the state of government? Of course, it is the belief those know what they are doing. And know what most likely will happen. Talk, consolation, showing other casualties, and forgetting that those individuals want to be needed, every one of them. And this could be done but then there is blockage. I myself had the chance, but not to the point that there was a real chance to do something, and then I felt not this and that, this is too much, and this is a part of him or her. All this narrowing in it is a building of boxes. Therefore, looking for it is a waiting that people follow what they themselves had in the law, because building new laws could then abolish the old. And this is shifting, in my viewpoint, illegal, even from the lawgivers. What now will come out of it? There will be psychiatrists looking at it, and then finding out there is a need to give the psychiatrists even more of because of that what they already have, and the normal thinking, the common sense, is not asked. Politicians pass the buck to most likely psychiatrists, and those say a little bit faulty behavior is not that evil. Indeed, it is. If it stays on as it is. Government working with laws and regulations is not everything. Those people who would do something, if there would be, and this is still a damage not being repaired. What I heard from my parents, this goes back to the beginning of democracy, that families are pushed out of the country. For others, maybe it is good. This cannot be solved for one region only. It is a thing like a movement, a culture movement, asking not only to prevent the next protest, violent protest, but to look that the democracy forces, the people, have the culture to look at each other's, and this had been the church's needs, or the hearts. And if the psychiatrists would do that, it would be a thing I never had ever heard about. If you go to a psychiatrist, he's not doing that what the papers say. I had to be there in the retraining program, in the so-called Hilfe zur Teilhabe. It is rather being put in boxes. And if someone is voluntarily doing something, he is narrowed in by laws and regulations, and regulations and insurance is all over the place. Therefore, what I'm looking at, from a personal perspective, that is the sober-minded that had been there, thinking, of course, having their own lives, but thinking to make it more secure, because people want it to be secure, and they're not solving it because detectives necessary, and real detectives, forensic. Forensic detectives are those who work with analog technology, who would then, in this case, in Magdeburg, look at the whole place. Why was it every time at the same place, and there is not something like a fence, you could build it that way, then you are thinking about the possibility of danger. Then not having only a Christmas market, but other festivities as well, and so on. I overheard that people said, oh, Christmas, that's not for me, but even quarrels among the merchants. I'm not allowed to do this and that. And this was because my mother had been, and I'm not showing her picture again, but you might look at it. This is personal, and I don't know how many others from the old cultures in this countryside, how many are still there. I myself thought about migrating to another country, and I thought much about it. And then I had in the 80s, it is quite a time ago, a little conversation with a man who was moving to the United States, and he said the children are not wanting to think too much about the problems in Europe, and that had not been the guests from those countries who would rather protest a little louder. And then if those are not allowed to be a little louder, it could be explosive. This is not an excuse. I'm not a psychiatrist first. I could understand psychiatrists are then responsible. And what do? Do they think about the heart? They think about chemistry. I was never allowed to be officially a doctor, but then asking what do? They give me something. You feel better? Yes, but the problems are not solved. Who could solve problems? This would then be a therapist. Are those people there? After having learned and having had a diploma, those are into laws and regulations. Therefore, to look in the box, and this had been done. Therefore, it is a recipe, but no own culture being allowed, people don't do it. And this is for me the same. The own culture is not necessarily the Prussian culture. It has a root there. And it is not necessarily a culture bound to this country. Therefore, this is a host country. Not a hostage, but it could come to that way if you're being in a hostage situation with laws and regulations. Yes, this could be by those who had the training by being narrowed by the Russians and by the world, by the bank that governed, that is controlling, regulating the flow of money in the world. The so-called World Fund, or what was it called? IWF, International World Finance, don't know what. And this is a good thing that there's regulation. People need it, I need it too, and there's not enough. But then thinking about it, what could I say? I can do it as I do. And then I tried it myself, and I understood then excuses. There was even the saying, we can't give you any money, because this is now something. The camera is in that way better position. This is only an example. There had been an asking from a country that wanted to move its head capital. This is my fingernail, and it is not of that importance. to be without a wrinkle or blemish, and those are blemishes, but the real ones, not of the most importance, but important if you can afford it. What is with Magdeburg? What will it do to the people? I overheard, and overhearing does mean maybe it was said to me, but it was not the main topic. We will have our Weihnachtsmarkt, our Christmas market. We won't let ourselves this to be forbidden. And this, of course, suspicion cannot be proved that it is because of that. There had been the Spaziergänger in Dresden, and it was the same. I asked for a little bit support, but people expect something that is 100% sure. Who is going and is investing into people and then waiting a generation? My mother had been doing that, and this could be proved if I needed it, but this is not easy. In the 50s and 60s and 70s, and this is statesman level. She was going to the unemployment spots that had been in the papers. There's an industry that is closing down, and she thought, there can I do something, and this is investing into the next generation. I think the recipe had been to first find the right one and look at it, that he is not knowing that you have the source of money. Be an undercover recruiter, and myself was there to look a little bit for my mother. As a child it was. You are looking for work, or do you know where I can find some? It was at the bus stop and so on. And then some people said something to learn and to give information. It was one hand is washing the other. How is that possible? Not through the internet. You need to look at the body language. You need to look at the con man. Possibly it is always a problem that someone is looking for something. Therefore, you have to go undercover a little bit. And then the internet is full of digital con man activity. Therefore, this is the first problem. Go offline is the need, but the internet is important as well to give information, but to learn about people. How many cultures are there? It is not from the danger perspective, it is rather that besides solving the problem of the heart, it is, I think, understanding that not everyone is being supported as it ought to be. I understand there had been refugees. There was a telephone call. Real stories. I'm not a whistleblower. I do not give details, and I would not know why I should do so. I could have some motives, but how can you say something against chancellors or presidents? Those have the decision what others work on. Therefore, if you have someone taking over responsibility, it is rather a problem first in the hands of others, and then one is taking over responsibility. And with this problem, this explosion, this is the sign for danger, currency danger. There had been an explosion, Magdeburg, and this had been before, maybe at other locations, of course. And then what do people do? I was there overhearing what was said. Helping my mother was not an option. She asked every other day, maybe you want to look into this or that. And I knew it is training, and then looking for who is that? What is his possibilities and his willingness? Police security. What is the police allowed to do? The databases. And then going to the allies. How do they get what they have? This was not known. Then there was the other line. And it was allowed to surveil diplomacy. No, the worldwide travelers also being diplomats, newspapermen, and what else? And then there's explosives. This is one thing. But looking from the other side, there's a heart. And what is with the heart? This is a thing for the churches, not psychiatrists. Psychiatrists go there and give you chemicals. A therapist would look at the problem, and he needs payment as well. We had therapists for the Olympics, training program of the GDR, no, it was the DDR, German Democratic Republic, and it was a thing we did. I was enjoying it very much with enjoyment. It was being possible to have a good training and to have the first ranks. And this was not known to others, but it was a thing to first persuade. This would give some satisfaction for the Eastern people. And it was, first of all, giving those the right motives to be a trainee, to be training for running, for swimming, for the other sporting things, than being in the first ranks in the Olympics. And the whole family had little advantage. First the recruiting. And not only the body is important, but the mind as well. And this had been, for my grandfather's program, being a recruiter. Was he looking at ethics? What? At what? At people. And this is really there. You need your own identity. Paulina, she was then following Karl, my grandfather. She was from Baltic, Slavian background. Karl had said, I'm now, the Western style and with German roots. Or was that Fritz? But after all, he was Karl. And if you are now hearing this, you are you. And then you have your background. And if there's recruiting, the problem is the agenda. I understood it is important to know things, to know what the agenda, the hidden agenda, most likely there is one, is behind the investment, and there should be the state entities objective. It should be the case, otherwise it is not a state entity. Is it, or is it not allowed? This question you can ask directly. As a detective, you're there and having interrogations. And my strategy always had been to accept that there are hidden agendas. and then, if possible, to make a contract and to give some space to follow it. Therefore, there had been negotiations with the so-called mafia in Italy. I wasn't there personally, I was never there. I was too small, and we had our spare time with joking. Because my mother said, you ought to be older. You were born too late. And this is the demand of leaders. Where are those? I met a leader who came to this called Germany, and this is a brand mark. I don't like the name right now. It is rather the Federal Republic. The Germany of Karl had been, he had his brand mark, and this was the Western style. There's acceptance that those agendas are there. In German, agenda and agenten. The plural for an agenda, that is a plan, of course, with margin not open. You accept that, and you find out. And this, of course, legally, and those had all been psychiatrists, all. By training, because it was necessary, being on the road with bankers, and this is necessary. A good banking family has it in its blood. And the gypsies had been psychiatrists as well. We were looking for those who were following their words, the prerequisites. If there is then a contract, and there had then been the rule, since when it is a contract, of course, pre-talks or even before the thinking, this can be regulated. And then I learned it is regulated that much that there is nearly no space. There came even the family heads of totally unknown gypsies, Fahrensleute. This is German travelers, Fahrensleute. And those said, why do you want to help? And I started as a boy, it was at the doorstep, to explain this really had been the case, that I have the future in sight. I cannot say that it is because I am a believer. Those had all been some kind of believers. They believed into something, otherwise they wouldn't do a thing that is not seen, that is not even been contracted. And the belief now needed is to invest a little bit, as my mother had done before, in people in the future. And this should the state do, and how it is doing it, the state entities. The state would be someone who would take over responsibility. I don't see that. It is a passing of bucks. Police, who is responsible? One police car was not standing right, okay. The driver of the police car, or the man who was parking where the police car should. This really was in the papers. And for me it is, from my perspective as a strategist, this is somehow in the tradition as well. There had been merchants in, I think it was Great Britain, Liverpool, two Americans, so-called Americans, had been investing and then leaving the football club. And there was, the word came to my ears. I said to the uncle, so-called uncle, he was therefore near a soulmate, maybe 30%, this is quite much, but he was a fellow believer. How much? I don't know. It is not a thing that is there, it is somewhere accepted and to work with. And then I said, maybe this could be something you do as your investment, and I would support it with my counsel to my mother and to their recipients of counseling. And then there was a program in Liverpool to give the culture a ground, a solid ground, and it is strategy that counts. Should the people learn by playing football? Maybe you can find out something. And therefore, the training had already been there, but it is something you do as an extra. And if the chance is then developing to the point that it is not working out, it was, as the saying goes, der Weg ist das Ziel, the way is the goal, it is what is going on the way. And hopefully people are doing things, that there is a bondage, maybe in sports, maybe even in policing. But I haven't heard about it for a long time. My mother stopped. She had to stop because of her age. And then I was supposed to follow, and it was said it was, of course, yes, we will try, but then I don't want to complain, but others know about the possibilities, and that I'm very cautious. Do not accuse people if you can't prove it, is the point. It is, you are getting the chance, the possibility, and then there are prerequisites, not necessarily there by default, but you're not nice enough, your stature is not good to be a leader, good enough to be a leader, your voice is not deep enough, and you can learn. Therefore I was a little bit with the film industry, and it was done everything, and I feel sorry for Mr. Bronson, for example. He said he is not pleased. I said I will try. It did not work out, but I cannot leave the peaceful way, the way of peace. That is, I need strong fighters in the field of law, and in the field of persuasion, and in the field of detecting. If you start the fight, the casualties have been too much. Near whole family of both lines are dead. All those Prussian princes, even after the war, one was taking over responsibility and then he shot himself. It was too much. And I understood, because of my heart, that my mother's heart was shocked to think about it again. Maybe she really had been the sister who said, one has to take over responsibility. And this is true. Therefore, do not take it lightly that I'm now detecting responsibility, not legally. It is between my mother and me, not between you and me. But what can be done is to look at things and to give a counsel. And it cannot be done without people, those who are there. And if you want to make them German, good Allemands, this would be the word. Alemannia. In German, alle Männer müssen zusammenstehen, and the wives as well. All men should stand together to be a comradeship, to build a comradeship. The heart is there, but you need not to show it. If you have a football club, you have a fan club. There's a heart, but people don't say it. It is there. And Magdeburg is only a place, one place among many. And the regulations are important. The whole world is built on it. And now I'm thinking, where are the Allemands? The Alemannen. The German, it's sounding like germs, but it isn't. The Urdeutsch, the very old German, Ur is from of old. Urdeutsch. It's not the clock, it's Urdeutsch. This is the looking for unity. When the anthem was Deutschland über alles, that was meaning Germany over all. Yes, over Bavarians, over Prussians, over Hessians. Then later it was misunderstood. You cannot stand and be above other people. That would be of no sense. If the culture is competing, then it is the culture to find a common ground. And this is not possible without philosophical thinking. Losing their own identity, their own religion is not helping. And luckily others don't do it. But then it is misused. What is religion? Is the point. When is the bridge to go to regulations? And Treu und Glauben, and truth and truthfulness, is a kind of a belief inside of the law. It says in the traffic codex, the first regulation is to be careful about others as well, auf andere Rücksicht nehmen. And the translation was not too good. Therefore, detectives are necessary. And forensic, that means to look at things. I cannot say what the whole thing was in Magdeburg, or still is. In the field of medical, it is a thing where people are forced to work in the field of seniors, caring business, in the seniors caring business in the Altenheime, seniors residences. And then there came people from the East saying, we would never give our elders in foreign hands, and maybe they can do it. And then people look at my tie, that is a fly. And then I'm not talking too fast. I now understand people look for the sportsman. Of course you need it. There had been the program with the Olympics wannabes. And then it was working out. But I knew how much effort there had been. And it was a program where first the recruiting had been there. You could do it again. Why is it not done? People do not want those with a good body and a good environment to be first. They want to be all-inclusive. And this then is, of course, ideology. You can do one or the other. But to prevent danger, do not forget what it is all about in the heart. A man is being born by a woman, therefore his mother, he's looking for her, or he's following, or he's fighting. Then the father is important. And then if there is none, then you have the group in the children's homes. I had been very much asked. I now understand. It had been expectation. It was not that I wanted it. My father, as it was said, was not wanted. Yes, he was wanted. And he had to fight to be the best as well. And Pauline was on one side. With her own son, she said, he is my son. And the others could be replacements for this and that. And then it was that I heard others in their leading families do the same, how it is handled nowadays. All inclusive. If you do not have your forefathers, then look for other forefathers to have as role models. And the problem with the children's homes, I was there being put in the papers. If someone needed the counsel of a father, he could ask me. But maybe, I don't know why it wasn't the case that I had been asked. Maybe it is not possible to replace someone. You need bondage, living together. And for me, this had been my mother, and my mother and my mother. There have been many women taking over, and this is then to be careful. Carefully be looked at with detecting ability. And the recipe is there. The special togetherness should be not in one place only, but it is, as it is said, a township after township. Plan to be followed, maybe worldwide. And do not forget, the past gives you examples how it could work out and how much it is to be invested. How much. I have only one quite successful, only for a short time, but quite successful thing, where the young comrades worked together. First they had to build something and then could invest. And then the whole politics, how much did they blow away? In 1933, it was 35. Some said this hopefully is soon over. This ghost was not going away. It was destruction after destruction. And then afterward, after 45, there was the moving of the eastern boundaries. And then I was born somehow, somewhere. And I was glad to having had parents who knew how it is to be a child. The expectations had been there and are still there, but it is a worldwide thing. Those Allemands, those Germans, had emigrated very much and very often. I understand that, and therefore the internet is good to reach some of them, but do not have too many expectations, too much too soon. If it is not possible in this countryside, it could be somewhere else. And there had been a start, and there were immigrants to Australia, and then they built up something. And it is maintenance needed. And then it is all a matter of economics as well. Therefore I'm looking for some help to find out what is there. There was a time when the ruins had been Aufstieg aus Ruinen, like in the anthem, auferstanden aus Ruinen. There had been the, I don't know if the artists of the DDR hymn anthem or the musician had been at the doorstep, and he was, I think, from Western Berlin. Is that right? And then it was never sung, because he was not even a communist. And this was much after 55, and now we have 2024. But what I expect is to get my funds that must be working somewhere, the assets. That, yes, I think so. Karl was relying on protection as well. And the protection should be there by taxes, by tax-paying money. But if not, you need a little bit yourself, but I can't afford that. Not without your help. And I'm looking at the things that were for a reason, and I understand, hidden. Later I learned my mother was involved as a counselor. And I myself was even counseling somehow. In the piece of the labor market. I remember I had been a visitor to the Opelwerk. I don't know where it had been. And I was there working for some days. And it was to give the idea how it had been. It is looking at the Stimmung, looking at the weather, the temperature in the workforce. And it is very important to understand what's going on. And I'm quite not pleased that the internet is not that reliable in all its digital forms. Therefore, please take this as an information only, not good enough to decide on it. Please ask me yourself, and this should be a follow-up of correspondence. I was trying to be cautious, and in the Cold War it was known that people trick, and then later it was even a thing like sports behaviorism, accepted by some, and then people feel forgotten and make explosives. Of course not accepted, but psychiatrists then go after it and try to understand. And this, of course, is schooling. Schooling is necessary, that this is not an option. But to defend could be calculated how much it costs. And an attack should be possible in the field of law. And that then would be contract law. But first of all, I need foundations. Foundations that are there. Foundations that are there. This is another sheet of paper. That are already there. and being administrated, it could be on very much places. And this, if Karl had been Karl, my grandfather Karl had been the Karl sometimes talked about, and Fritz more than that, even more than that, building on the foundation of the culture. In the Fränkische Anstalt, my mother said there was a back door. The official entrance was closed, forbidden to be used anymore. Then there was had been a back door, and my father went there to talk about the afterward society, how to build it from scratch on. And the designated leader of the Fränkische Anstalten, or Anstalt, it was said he survived, but then later was desperate. And this also gave me an understanding. It is better to do as my mother said, to wait. Me as a child at school, and then understanding America was built because people fled Europe. And leaving the old ghosts couldn't be, it was what was wanted, couldn't be what happened. Maybe they take the ghosts, or they had taken the ghosts with them without knowing it. What had been the old ghosts? It had been the interwoven merchandise with culture, and then the house regulations. And then there had been the contracts of buying land from Indians. Some were then being cancelled. I heard it was with the Ute. I was asked if I could do something my father had started to look into the contract. And then there was asking how both sides would accept it to be valid. And then it is important that you, at the moment, are not having one-sided interest. And it is all questioned and proved. And now it is that it is to be understood. There are tricks on all sides. Therefore, this is a thing that is there for people to be reliable. But the rest is contract business. And new contracts are not allowed to push others away. This then would even make a law illegal. For example, to say the old things are now gone. It had been said enough, accepted that the Enteignung, and then people went to court against it. The Enteignung, I don't know what exactly, what Enteignung, what taken out of possessions in the DDR, in the GRD, German Democratic GDR, the Eastern Germany. There had been a forceful cancelling of property rights, and that somehow was accepted. But if that is the case, then someone is to take over responsibility, and this is not something I understand. I only heard about it. You can only understand it if you know exactly how it is accepted. Was it for foreigners as well? This is, for example, a question. And it is the same with those. How is it about their financial situation? Do they feel being taken advantage of? If people put something to the end with an explosion, or people, then it is desperation. I think so, you might say so. Therefore, it had been my learning, you can, out of the rubbles, start anew. But still people have expectations, and for me it is, my mother is not there anymore, and my mother not, I have two, because of their sharing me in the pregnancy. And it is not a thing I would advise you to do. I can remember there was fear I could be blind, because there was light in between. It is because of the danger for dying, of dying. Fear for dying. And then it is not the question who gave me birth. It was not sad. It is first a thing private, of course. No, I understand why my mother said it nevertheless. But both were under pressure, and both were waiting for things to be corrected. And this is being pushed inside of the German culture. It gives me understanding how others could feel, maybe having fled their countries and now coming to a country that is giving them freedom from war, from the dangers of war, or something like it, but not the freedom to develop. Why would I never go and blow something up? Because this is my culture, but it is my culture also not to accept injustices, and not against me also not against me. Please make up your standpoint by thinking about a support. It had been before calculated there's no use to fight with the weapons usually used in war. This should be a thing where I have not good chances, but the best, if people do not use law and regulations to make it legal to have stolen. 1 hour, 8 minutes, 7 seconds. Donnerstag, 26. Dezember 2024. Sie können mich auch auf Deutsch fragen. Das ist auch friedrich4@nrx.de. Aber bitte nicht damit rechnen, dass alles durchkommt. Es scheint irgendwie gefiltert. Genaueres kann ich dazu nicht sagen. Vielen Dank, bis zum nächsten Mal.